this works well. Yes, there I got one microphone left here. All right. So you all got your mics, right? So thank you all for joining, and I hope to make sure that we can enlighten you a little bit and hopefully also entertain you a little bit. Especially after lunch, you probably need a bit of energy, so we'll try to keep the pace in a bit, and hopefully you'll enjoy. But of course, it also is a bit dependent on your own input. As you're able to give us questions through Slido and also vote with us on some of the questions that have been prepared. So I definitely invite you all to be very interactive to make this conversation as valuable for you as possible. Then briefly, before I go into my esteemed panelists, just briefly setting the scene a little bit. There's global confusion about AI at the moment, right? There's peak investment in AI. At the same time, if you ask people what AI means, they all actually talk about something different. And AI has been around already for ages, right? It started out with more advanced data analytics, as you could say. Models that could be operated by very technical people that could actually enhance our statistics analysis on large sums of data. But especially with the rise of conversational AI, with the setup of ChatGPT, that became very popularized just a couple of years ago, suddenly people began to imagine something else. And what's really important there especially is the fact that now suddenly everybody can talk to a computer and can let it do something that they want. They can create programs, they can create analysis without having to be very technical themselves. This is the big shift that we're in at the moment. But it doesn't actually mean that when we talk about AI, we all talk about the same thing. But that's what we're going to explore today. What does it actually mean? And also what does it mean for microfinance? Is it actually pushing microfinance in a certain direction? Or is it actually very likely that things will stay the same for the coming period and we'll just be operating smarter chatbots? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure my panelists know a lot about this. So I'm definitely going to have you hopefully interrogate them as well, together with me, to make sure that they give us the answers to everything that we want to know about AI. So I hope I don't promise too much, but I'm very confident about the delivery here at this level. So that said, let's get it started. First of all, Khalid, if I may start just with you briefly. Just briefly touch upon how you actually work with AI on a day-to-day basis and your first view of what we should know.
We work with AI at different levels. It starts from when we identify what data do we need to use, how will it be binned, how will it read the data to be made more meaningful in terms of where it should sit, what product should it be linked to, which scorecard does it get to. So the way we work is that we have imagined, and this is very new, this is 6 months old. Before this, we still have a data modeling team, a data engineering team, analytics team, and the scoring team was getting the data, they would score, they would bin it, they would clean it, and they would put it in bronze and silver layer. Now everything can be done with certain validations and some human touch through the AIs. This is just one area which I touched upon. When we go towards development of the product itself, the coding has changed. Even I can do coding and I'm an accountant, so it has changed. So it is multi-layered in both directions, horizontal and vertical.
And maybe very briefly to touch upon that, so you are an accountant and you are able to do coding. Should you?
Why not? Because the time it will take for me to explain it to a business requirement analyst and then to an engineer who will then code it, it might take me lesser time to explain it to an AI, and it can generate the code for me and show me the results on the go.
Thanks. Rajesh, what's your perspective on this? You're also deep into the layers of financial institutions and their core data infrastructure. What's your view on this?
So I think my view on AI would be to look at the example you took of ChatGPT. I see the transformation of what Gen AI will bring across to the concept of AI to be pretty much the smartphone moment for artificial intelligence. Because we've been into AI almost more than 2 decades. It's been used for financial crime surveillance. It's been used to manage models, and it was all depending on data. But now you're bringing an aspect of engagement, and that's the power to AI that something like generative AI brings across. So I think the reimagination of the use of AI has started from there. Otherwise, it was the classic models Like for example, I'm very tempted to say credit monitoring, and I'm sure that's going to be the topic of discussion through this session. But I would say my take on AI would be to be having something that is more impactful from a customer perspective. Look at what has brought it into the limelight. It has been engagement. So why don't microfinance firms use it for the engagement part to enhance the aspect that someone can speak to a field agent, their devices, in the local language, communicate what their need is, and then engage in a way which is all recorded back, not from a perspective of the audio recording, etc., but the context, the reasoning for, let's say, giving the loan or not giving the loan, all of that, and use that data to make financing and inclusion better.
Great. This is a great example. I think it's quite easy. Do you recognize that, Seth? Is that also how you would go at it?
So, yeah, I'll start with a little bit of humbleness on this. There's so much more we don't know right now than what we do know. So I appreciate the introduction, and we're all a bunch of experts, we have a lot to say. I still have a lot of questions, and I'm sure you all do too. What we can speak to is how we've started to use AI and how we envision it could add value to FINCA and to our subsidiaries across the world. I come from product. I'm the Chief Product Officer. I'm a recovering Chief Marketing Officer, but I still have a little bit of it in me. We are using it across the product life cycle right now in different pilots. We are using it to understand requirements, to understand customer problems. We're using it with underwriting. We're using it with customer feedback loops. And we're also using it to help develop our products in terms of the features, right? I would say we're more than advanced in the beginning part by actually having actual live tests and evidence that's actually proven to add value, but there's a lot more ahead of us than behind us.
That I fully concur. I think there's a lot to be explored since we're just so fresh into this ecosystem that creates these possibilities. How about you?
Well, I think I bring a bit of a different perspective on the table because we are using already AI in digitization. To put it a bit in context, at Filbo we were the first microfinance institution who launched 100% digital flow back in 2020. So we already have 6 years history about implementing 100% digital microfinance. You can imagine that a lot of people told us it's not possible to digitize microfinance. Wasn't true, because we learned something very important. Customers do not want digitization for sure. They want better services, less friction, faster responses. And this is what we did. Today we are signing over 90% of our loan contracts fully digital, which means video identification, electronic signature, although we have 50% of our clients in rural areas. We have developed, of course, an AI behind scoring model. In order for us to be able to take the decision in hours. We sometimes have instant decision. In average, we are about 6 hours for every new customer. But another thing that we learned was that actually, and we figured out quite fast, we needed a digital assisted flow. That means that we needed to to involve the platform to an omni-channel system. If the client starts offline, to close online, or the other way around, or 100% digital if he is fully digitized.
Was that actually part of the result, Georgiana, about the fact that you started fairly early, that you actually had to adopt again to actually new possibilities entering the market?
We already implemented the chatbot back in 2024. Which was about education, not for profit. So our chatbot guides entrepreneurs for green investments. So if a small business would want to invest in green investments or solar panels, energy efficiency, it guides them through. And we want to evolve with the platform that we have towards business assistant for getting the advice, but still keeping the human interaction.
Yeah, so I think it's a wonderful way to further enhance the services to your customers. Is that something you would recognize as well, Seth? Is that, do you think that this is a path that's also suitable to most of your microfinance?
Yeah, let me frame sort of similar how we're using it right now and how we're specifically using it with customers and customer feedback. I think the way I think about the use cases that we've started off with transformation and AI have been around access, improved decision making, and then turning FINCA into a faster learning organization using the voice of the customer feedback from a AI platform that we have in Zambia. So I speak from the perspective of most of the countries that we work in Africa, even though I sit on the board of our FINCA Armenia subsidiary, but we have countries in Zambia, we have subsidiaries in Zambia, Tanzania, Uganda, DRC, Nigeria, and Malawi. On the access side, we have been able to successfully launch a flex loan product that uses AI to use mobile data, SMS data, and to turn that into something that's scored for the customers that are digitally connected but invisible. Right? We are a mission-guided organization. We are dedicated to reaching the unserved. And what you see, especially amongst some of the youth of our subsidiaries, is that they are still invisible, but they are digitally savvy, and increasingly so. We're partnering with a company in Zambia called Pygmy that is allowing us to score customers using AI from the data that they get from customer consent with the mobile network operator, M&M. So the second one is around underwriting. I think this is the one you hear about a lot, right? To make our underwriting more efficient. We still do group lending. We have group lending in Africa, but with the subsidiary, the product has changed over the years from the traditional meeting once a week, intensive loan officer engagement, significant amounts of financial literacy, and a lot of time, to a hybrid model where these customers are also seen as individuals and that they're able to be scored using our proprietary score that's AI assisted and that allows them to graduate up to an individual loan if they choose to. We've successfully launched this in Uganda and we're seeing some promising results of it. And the third one I think is the most important and a little bit more relevant with what you said is using AI to create this learning organization and shortening the amount of time and effort that's needed for customer feedback. You know, traditionally, we have done these studies. We do these surveys, we hire enumerators, we hire people to go out and ask questions, and we do it once a year. It costs a lot of time and it costs a lot of money. In Zambia, what we've done is onto the platforms that we already have, our DFA, we've been able to put apps that capture voice of the customer, the interview, and the interaction that's already happening. We have two use cases for this that we've been able to successfully pilot. The first one is to speed up the time to acquire a customer because we're able to capture the application data and to use it and to populate these applications and faster and hopefully more accurately. The second one is to capture insights that can then be turned around to improve either the customer journey or the product features or anything about the product and some of the frictions and pain points that we're seeing. This is very promising, this last one. The challenges, of course, different languages, different dialects, feasibility, but you start slowly. And so the last point I'll just sort of want to make on this is that I run what we call the Poverty Eradication Lab of FINCA. And I use the lab very intentionally, right? We have the principle at FINCA that you can show what it looks like in a beautiful PowerPoint and you can show what it looks like at scale and talk about it, but first you have to make sure it works. And so we've established a lab that looks at all of these different use cases, that tests things, sometimes low fidelity. Look here, these are my notes for this conference, right? It's on a piece of paper here for my AI conference. So our mindset is that we test, we learn, and then we digitize, right? We make sure that it's delivering value for our customers, for our subsidiaries, for our network, before we scale. And all the three examples that I just gave, we've taken it through that process.
Great examples, I think, very practical, hopefully also for you, for the audience. What we want to do is actually also get you to act upon this, so if we could actually get the Slido connection on, because I think there's a first question for you that we would like your input on. Let's see if I can click something here. Yes, here we go. I hope you still already have used Slido, so please give it a go. In the meanwhile, we might actually ask something to Alexandra. Alexandra, since you are around, what would be your view on the largest obstacle for use of AI within microfinance institutes? I'm told we have to give her some time. But she may not be listening.
Honestly, it's not the models. It's the data underneath them. Most MFIs I work with across Central Asia and the Balkans have 10, 15 years of operational data sitting in a core banking system that wasn't designed to be queried. Loan officer notes are free text in 3 languages. Repayment data is clean, but everything around the why someone defaulted, why a group restructured, that's in someone's head or a WhatsApp thread. So you bolt a beautiful AI layer on top, and it confidently learns from a very narrow slice of reality. Garbage in, garbage out, but dressed up in a chatbot. The unglamorous fix is data infrastructure first. One of our portfolio companies in Georgia spent 9 months just restructuring their data warehouse before they touched a single model. Boring work. But the team that does that boring work is the team whose AI actually performs in 18 months.
That's interesting. I would say that AI would actually not have such a big problem with unstructured data, but that's maybe my view. Let me see, have you got to answer this as well? So legacy systems primarily, well, I think that brings you again to you, Rajesh. If we talk about legacy systems, I know that is what gets you going, right?
I think the whole aspect too, I think what Alexander also spoke about was also the aspect of data sitting in core banking systems not being used. A lot of what AI can do is only with data. So most of it has to happen, as Seth said, is to capture feedback from clients, whether it's through voice agents or otherwise. Again, I think Georgiana mentioned about omni-channel. The whole aspect is to reach out to customers from whatever channel is possible and make sure you capture data. So legacy systems were not designed to sort of reach out. They were more for efficiency than inclusiveness. So when you look at inclusion as an agenda, that's where I think omni-channel and the whole feedback loop, NPS scores, etc. come into play. So I think the adoption of AI does require data to be in place. So data quality is a very necessary component of that. But importantly, I think it is also about the mindset. When you place an objective for AI, you need to say, I want the AI, I won't use the word bias here, but when you put in an AI system, you need to say, my objective is to be inclusive. My objective is to be efficient. And these are 2 different things. We might make it look very similar when it comes to, let's say, if it's efficiency, I'll say I have to release a loan within 3 minutes. But if it's inclusive, it means I've heard the customer, I've taken the feedback, and I've reacted to that. And hence the motive of why you implement AI is important. Legacy systems are not meant to address that motive part very clearly. What legacy systems did is to say, give me a portfolio report that talks about my NPA, and that will tell me about the quality of my data and my client. So I think AI is going to bring that change across with adoption, that on top of the current legacy systems, you have to increasingly build the data, because there is data that is not usable. You have to find ways to use it. But I would say at what cost? The cost of implementing and integrating AI can very much kill the use case in many cases. So the idea is to start from scratch, start with the engagement layer, engage with your clients, you got a good set of data, and you also got the buyback because you built a new set of clients that won't now go to a fintech firm or somewhere else. You address the bang for the buck, and then build on it step by step.
Nice. Thanks, Rajesh. What I found interesting that in the meanwhile, actually, I see that the audience was influenced by Alexandra's advice and chose data quality as a much more important weight factor as an obstacle. But maybe, Khalid, you could actually shed some on that, because I think you're on the data processing side, whether you're able to actually collect the data to make credit decisions on. How's that going so far?
I think there are two sides to it. In case of a digital transformation of an institution. So currently where I work, we have given loans of around $300 million over 4 years. And the system has analyzed over 1 billion transactions and 30 million accounts. Now, if you put it in perspective, I mean, my experience before this company was 20 years in traditional lending, and we could not even think about doing it. So I think the first thing which we have to think is in two ways. Number one is that where is the data line? I think in my previous organization, when we got to the digital transformation, the question the board asked was, how do you want to stay relevant in the new world? So if you think about it from a customer angle, the new generation, they want product to be on their fingertips. They want the product to be intuitive, hyper-customized to their needs. They want to stay connected with the service provider. How can you achieve that? And where is the data line? So I think as an MFI, the first question I would ask myself or the board is, what are we building for? Are we building for future, or are we trying to digitize our existing systems? Because I think for MFIs, even for MFIs, and I work mostly in the digital systems, the data is somewhere out there. For example, you used to buy burger, getting into a car or a motorcycle and going to a burger shop. Now you order it on the app. So the data, the commerce transaction is there. There is so much data out there in so many forms. There are e-commerce platforms. There are ride-hailing services. I'll give you one example from Iraq, which was very interesting in terms of data. There are mobile wallets. We work with the banks. 90% on average, 90% of the bank depositors are not lent even a penny, and they have received remittances. Their monthly salary, their whatever money they get from cycling or Bitcoin. We never use that data. So my first point is, I think we have to change the way we think. We have to see where is the data line and where is the data being generated right now. Our kids do not go to the burger shop, which means once we die, the next generation, they will have created this whole layer of data, which does not exist today, perhaps not very number one. The second thing is on the governance side. I think the legacy systems, the data quality, in my view, with due respect to the end, they come later. The first thing is the understanding that what do we want to do, and I think in most of the boards and leadership, it is not clear. Someone wrote, we don't know where to start, and that is so correct. I mean, I left my job, my previous job, and I deliberately went into Fintech to understand how do they work. So when we talk about legacy system data quality, 1/3 of our budget goes into data teams only. There is a data engineering team, there is a data analytics team, there is a data modeling team, there is a data research team. 1/3 of the total budget is 70 people, 1/3 goes there. So I think it is, the onus is on us. I think someone said, if the problem looks too complex, people walk away. And I would say the board has to realize this, and we don't want to be that old guy. When we were younger, we used to have old guy who refused to use Excel or Lotus 150 because he or she was scared. I don't want to get, I don't know what this is. I think this change, the rest will fall in place. But I think that resistance is still seen in so many ways.
So we can make a nice bridge from there, from the governance perspective, because I think that's a really right call that you're making, that governance is really also something to fix before you start, right? And not too much after you started. Georgiana, how did you actually do that? If you look at this digitization, you're very advanced, but how did you actually make sure that you actually have the right, well, first of all, the right purpose in mind, but then actually make sure all the people are working in the same direction?
Yeah, that's right. It looks like that AI got it right about the main problem of implementing digitization, but for sure, in most of the cases, the legacy systems is the problem. I can confirm that because when we implemented in 2020 the digital flow, we moved into a new core banking system in cloud. So we moved all the data in cloud, so we forgot about the old systems. But that was not the main problem. Was in fact the know-how of microfinance, because microfinance is quite specific. And we were lucky to have about 25 years history and people with us with more than 15, 20 years who told us what to digitize. Because, as I said, microfinance is very, very specific. And the main issue in our case was not necessarily the technology, that you cannot digitize this and that or that, but the question was always, will the farmer still have access to financing if we do that? So we still have cases where we need human interaction because we need to understand the context, and I'll frame a bit on that. Think about the farmer who went through some difficulties, but when the sales advisors goes to them and finds out that the daughter just graduated and will come back and run the business, how will that data be captured? It takes some time. I mean, we will capture that data now with AI easier and train the models and use for further perspectives, but for the moment it's an obstacle in my opinion. So inclusion, I would say, I would say that inclusion is an obstacle because you need to understand the specific sector, the specific context, and the story of that client.
Yeah, clear point. Thanks. Yeah, please go
I
ahead.
think one of the mistakes, at least which we made back in the day when I was working, this is, the digital transformation is not a tech question. It's a business question. Because it changes the way you give the same product to the same client. For example, we had a client in Lebanon who used to get a $10,000 loan for a GA. And then we realized that she was buying her merchandise from a dark store, which was digital. So we thought, okay, what if we embed it in the model? And they had a closed loop model. Consequently, what happened was, she borrowed $9,000 over 10 months. So she got 9 loans because the merchandise, we would pay to the supplier, she would get the merchandise, she would sell it, she will pay them back to the merchandise, we will sweep them up. So the product, it's a business question, it's not a tech question.
Fully agree. Yeah, go ahead.
I would build on both of these comments, but Khalid, I completely agree with you. Digitization is not transformation alone. So FINCA's been around a long time. And I agree, legacy systems, of course, got that, check, data quality, yep, sure, all of the others. But change management has proven to be the one that has really got us, keeps you up at night. It's the sticking point. And it's really rethinking not just how you digitize different pieces of the process or different parts of your business, but how you think of it holistically. And let me give you just one example. The repeat loan offer that we give our loyal customers, right? It had been traditionally at FINCA just as difficult as the new customer process of 10 years ago. Hadn't really changed much. And we had brought in little pieces of transformation, right? We had brought in scoring, we had brought in DFA, we had these little flowers across our network, but it certainly wasn't like a garden that was working all together, right? So we've launched a product that's quite successful now in most of our subsidiaries. It's an auto-repeat loan. We call it the Level Up Loan. And when you think about this, when I say this word product, there's a lot of things that go into this that I'm talking about that require change, right? We're talking about reframing the customer problem, right? Which is the customer needs a loan, they need it fast, they need to interact with us as little as possible. There might be a human as well that's involved, especially for our rural customers, but reframing the customer problem is the first part. The second one, underwriting. We had launched scoring for our repeat customers and new-to-bank customers in every subsidiary. If you saw a heat map, you would see a check next to each one. but we still saw our MFIs relying on humans to do underwriting when the score wasn't, because the score wasn't being trusted as much as it could have been, because it was a change. It changed what their area of control was, and it changed how they had been doing their job and where they put their stamps literally onto the different forms. The third one, the product features for sure, right? Because the product that you are offering, the features like, you know, cashback schemes or removing collateral when a customer has had repayment behavior that's excellent. Like, these are things that require time and thinking about how you train your staff and bring them along on that journey. And of course, the last part, which we've already said, is that how do you embed the fact that a product isn't static and that the customer learning that you get back isn't done once a year from a survey, it's done ongoing. This is kind of been the challenge, and I put this under something like change management, respectfully. I don't want her to get angry at me, but this is where I would put sort of one of the biggest things that we've been encountering.
I totally agree. And I think one of the challenges there is, of course, that generally where you want to go, you build upon what you know you can do. And I think that's going to change now. So actually we got new tools, that means that you can reimagine where you want to go. And that's a tough game to play. And then actually bringing the organization along to go in the same direction. I think it's clear. I want to move on towards the risks. So I'll actually go to the next slide. Your works? Yes. So please give us some input on what scares you the most about actually adopting AI in your organization. I would like you all to reflect on that as well, because I think it's quite interesting to see. You know, there's a lot of promises about what AI can deliver, and we hope to have already shared a little bit on that. But of course, every change comes with risks. So just what's your perspective on that? How do you actually manage that risk properly about actually going into this change, for example, adapting more technology like AI?
So Seth mentioned this, that there's very little known about AI, and that scares us. But I think the other part is about the fact that AI has a habit of having bias, and it's quite dangerous when it comes to inclusion as an objective to a client. So if we were to have certain parameters that are made to sort of control this, it would probably address it in a different manner. It's one thing about responsible AI where we talk about explainability, but it's about saying explain to whom. So for example, if I built a credit rating model that rejected a loan and I kept it to convince myself that I did the right thing of rejecting the loan, you probably underserved the aspect of inclusion. But if I was to go back to the applicant and said that these are the reasons why your loan was rejected, and then come back with an explanation saying, oh, I forgot to add some more data, and these data points help me just cross the line. This will sort of bring across the element of there is bias, there are parameters that AI can't cross, but then some care that was taken either by the field agent with the human in the loop aspect to say, I want to override, I want to just give it one go to ask this question back, is the aspect of explainability that brings across an element of comfort to AI. So I think what scares me most about AI is the ability to have the bias. And the next part is about hallucination. It's not about just believing that AI is going to always give the right answer. Like, probably not everything that Alexandra said I agree with, but because Alexandra said it, I would probably like to say I concur, because it came from a digital channel. And there are elements that companies need to implement to overrule that. And I'll give you an example here. The previous example of the loan that was not paid or accrued is an important element where enterprises need to look at saying, we understand how much business we did. Let's see how much we did not approve. How much didn't go through the gate. And identify whether it fits in with your mission purpose. Now, you probably understood your mission purpose when you said, I want to have inclusion but also serve the poor by taking credit rating as one of the approvals. So, the human in the loop aspect will really help a lot during this transition period where AI moves from adaptation to autonomous.
Interesting perspective. I think that definitely the bias and hallucination, I think, are more fear factors we hear quite commonly. So thank you for sharing that. How about you?
I think the biggest risk of what scares is, it is like a aeroplane on autopilot. And imagine you do not even have a pilot sitting there. And what happens if the weather changes? think this is exactly how it works. So for example, for us, when we look at it in our organization, when we look at the agentic framework and deploying agents, we look at it from the customer lens, and we believe that the trust will be broken. That is what scares us. What if people stop trusting our system, being rejected, etc. So how do you recover that? There are two layers which needs to be followed. Number one is, as Rajesh said, explainability. It should be very transparent. How the decision was made, it should be so simple that the loan officer or agent should be able to explain, and we have gone to the next level. Then when the loan is approved or rejected, we send the scorecard to the client. Okay, here you see why it was rejected. The second piece which we have done is the loop. So what we have done is, during the different stages, so for example, we have scored someone, people are rejected, then they are sent these text messages, push notifications, then they were given the loan, then the loan came back slowly, and it picks signals at each step and identifies which signal affects which stage, and do we need to go back and calibrate. And of course, there is a layer of validation, but it happens. So for 1.2 billion transactions, you cannot do it manually. So the velocity increases, and you can do the same thing very, very fast and a much bigger scale. But what scares us the most, that what if the client loses the trust in that system? And I think that's the most important piece.
Yep. Thanks. Georgiana, yes.
I fully subscribe to what it was said, because trust is really important. My personal opinion is that we shouldn't be scared. I know that we know little about AI, and we knew little about any new technology. I really believe it's the fastest advancing technology that we at least know as humans. It's unbelievable how fast it's changing. If we look about the AI models one year ago, but 1 month ago or even 1 week ago, it's unbelievable. So we need to adapt to the change. We need to embrace it and make sure we maintain trust and accountability. So that would be my opinion on that. We just need to to embrace the.
We're good at managing risk, right? So we should also be able to manage this one, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. So, and one more thing, based on our internal experience, I don't think we can simply download from the cloud the knowledge that we got into microfinance. So we have all probably at least 30 years history in microfinance. So we know quite well what it works, and purpose, it's the main mission that we have. It's not the technology, as we discussed earlier. So if we maintain that, we shouldn't be scared, in my opinion.
Yeah, and interesting also to take what you're actually saying is that we could, for example, actually be better at analyzing why credits are refused and actually create a higher level of inclusion, potentially, by using the models that are available, for example. What's your view on that?
Well, everyone said it really well. I mean, false confidence and explainability, and yes, we shouldn't be scared. It's a good point, right? But we should be very intentional. And I think I sincerely agree with what everyone said. So the only one I would add to it is that there's the fear of mission drift, and there's the fear that we lose the customer in the rush to adopt something that shows promise. And so the basics still matter, right? The basics of, are we designing and delivering products that improve people's lives? Most of us, we are mission-driven organizations that care about poverty, that care about inclusion, that care about lifting people up. That's the non-debatable principle that we all follow our North Star, right? And so you do have, in many organizations, you have silos, you have people that are using AI in different ways at different parts of the organization. In many ways, organizations have been slow to adopt policies and protect what can be put there versus what not, and we shouldn't lose sight of the staff that are doing it, well-intentioned certainly, but ultimately it's not a value to the customer. So I think to add to the wonderful things that my colleagues have said, it's just this idea, and we forget that at this heart is delivering value to the customer, right? And that comes from understanding them. AI can help, it can automate, it can accelerate, it can make it faster, but the fundamental truth of what we need to find out from them, that remains.
Thanks, Seth. I think that's a fair point to keep that tidy with the purpose predominantly. I just want to pick up on confidentiality, as that was largely put in by the audience, but that's perhaps one we can actually ask Alexandra, because Alexandra, I'm actually not so sure where all this data goes. Right? So this conversation, which clouds does that end up in, and who else has access to this? Could you explain a bit? I'm curious what she comes up with, and then we'll move on to talk a little bit more about the future of microfinance given these technologies' development. This is also where a US audience could also give in new questions for us to answer, and my esteemed panelists. But here's Alexandra.
Right. So, the honest answer is most MFIs have no idea where their data physically sits. And that's the actual problem. When you use a hosted AI service, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, whoever, your prompts travel to their data centers. Could be Ireland, could be Virginia, could be Frankfurt. Depends on the contract tier you're on the free or basic tiers. That data can be used to improve models. On enterprise tiers, it usually isn't. But you have to actually read the contract and tick the right boxes. Here's the thing. If a loan officer in Tbilisi pastes a client's ID number into ChatGPT to draft a letter, that data has now left Georgia. It's sitting on a server in another jurisdiction. Your local data protection regulator may or may not be okay with that. Most MFI boards have never had this conversation. The practical fix is boring, but cheap. Set an enterprise contract with one provider, turn off training on your data in writing, route everything through that single gateway, and block the consumer versions on company devices. One of our portfolio companies in Kosovo did exactly this. Took about 6 weeks. Now they actually know where their data goes. Most don't.
Well, thank you, Alexandra. I think that's quite a good answer, and I think it's definitely worthwhile discussion, I think, within your respective organizations, because it is often quite a challenge to figure out what the agreements are underlying this and where the data can go. And since there's still, technically everybody should be going for data minimalization, at the same time, a lot of organizations still benefit from data maximization, especially if you look into the AI building companies. So always beware from that perspective where your company is going. Well, please also use the questionnaire through Slido to give us some input for later on. But first I'd like to check in with you, but maybe Rajesh would start with you. If you envision the future of MFI, especially given all the technology developments, where do you see things changing? I mean, is there still a need for microfinance in 10 years from now, or will it actually be on the top of its game because there's actually much more need for purpose and using the technology in the right way?
I think technology comes second. The important part is microfinance has a very critical role to play in inclusion. So it's going to stay forever. And you've seen people write obituaries of a particular business model like microfinancing. Oh, Fintech is coming, microfinance will go out. Somebody else is coming now, it's going out. The big tech companies have come, microfinance is out. It's never going to happen because what microfinance has today is the element of trust and the outreach. It's a 4-decade-old industry. Probably operated much larger earlier, but it's been 4 decades of organized development that's happened in the area. So I think that's bound to stay. What's definitely going to transform that is how you win the trust of customers with AI. And I would say focus on engagement with the client so that you're addressing those key areas. AI is going to bring some challenges on its way, either in terms of the models changing or in terms of the amount of data that you need to make it efficient, or for the factor that it might bring out elements within your business that you don't see as were covered in your risk model. With all that said, I think AI, the microfinance industry will certainly have to adopt AI for one reason, that today you have somebody who is able to get a loan on an app on a click of a button. And probably what drives customers not to do it so far is probably the absence of a mobile device in their hands. That's currently your customer base. But if it was to happen through SMSs, if it was able to happen through other modes, that clientele will slowly get across to a different business model of, let's say, a fintech firm addressing it. Fintech firms have private equity funds that are flushing them with capital, right? Microfinance firms need events like this to have meetings and networking to be able to raise that capital. So mind you, we've got to understand that there are operational issues that come up in terms of the model itself of how you raise capital and who is able to service the particular mission of microfinance firms. So the best way to do it is probably to retain your customer base. You've got a particular customer base that trusts you, hold on to them, use AI to that effect to make sure that the inclusion model is the one that you adopt, because the efficiency model is anyways going to work. You have core systems, you will implement better data controls with time. But the inclusion one is not something that is set out in the strategy. That's where technology needs to transform and adapt.
Okay, thanks. Seth, do you concur to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think in 10 years our customers are going to care if we're called an MFI, if we're called a platform, if we're called a fintech. I don't think it matters. Georgiana already said it, right? What do customers want, right? They want convenience, they want speed, they trust, right? An organization that they can trust with their financial future. You said it best there. I think, look, there's three things that come to mind about the future of MFI for me. Just to add, because he's already said a bunch of them. One is, we often think of credit, but credit alone is not a silver bullet, and it's something that's a piece of our puzzle. It's certainly an important tool for intervention, for advancing our mission, for keeping our subsidiaries and our MFI sustainable. It's not the only one. Thinking about the breadth of what people need, it's credit and beyond. Two, many MFIs we can't do it alone, right? Partnerships and finding organizations that fill gaps that you have, rather than trying to go it alone and try and solve the ocean is sort of an old, outdated model. And I think that at least at FINCA we've done a good job of expanding our group of partnerships. And then the last one is the key question you just asked is evolving, right? Figuring out how technology helps us reach our customers. What is the right path? What do we say no to? Or what do we say we need to test? I think we will evolve. I mean, you just said it. I think itself started in village banking, El Salvador, 1984, right? Village banking evolving to individual loans, transforming to deposit-taking institutions, fintech and financial and channels, and all of that in the 2000s, and now AI, right? We have shown a resilience, we've shown an ability to evolve, and it's because of the trust that we have with the customers and the need that we feel in our mission. So if we stick to that and keep it as our North Star, I think full stop, we will still be here and still be relevant.
Great, thanks, Seth. Yeah.
I think I already mentioned the future of MFI. It's quite clear from my perspective, and I think you need to embrace technology. So you need to embrace digitization, you need to embrace AI. You need to go into deposits, taking deposits. I really believe that. Like you said, yeah, the entrepreneur doesn't wake up in the morning and says, I need a loan. He needs clients, he needs to grow, he needs employees, he has a lot of other things to solve. And I think MFIs, with the development of the technology, can now compete with other types of institutions, can embrace fintechs, can become part of the customer journeys in the future. And I think this is part of technology adoption throughout the time, keeping, of course, purpose first.
Yeah, thank you. But what you also told me at the beginning is that you're actually also seeing a broadening of the services, right, as part of that. So
We already we are already doing that because we've seen that these clients are not properly served with all the needs that they have, and they will stop using 5 apps to access services. So they need something to trust, but in one place. And we are moving towards that. So at Filbo, we are also having an e-money institution in our group, and we are able to provide accounts for our clients. We are able to provide cards, e-invoicing connected to Romanian tax system. So we embed all the services that the client, a micro business, would need based on the microfinance experience that we have built throughout the 30 years experience.
Great, thanks.
I think I will have 2 things to say. I mean, this is the difficult question on the inclusion. So the company I work for is commercial entity. I mean, it is money from a venture capital fund. We gave 350,000 loans in 4 years. Let's look at the other side of the data, which I recently got exposed to. Half of the 300 million went to MSMEs. The average ticket was $7,000, and the other half went to individuals. Individuals have further 2 categories: consumers and self-employed individuals. 44% of the MSMEs were first-time borrowers, and 70% of the women who got the loan to the individuals were first-time borrowers. And it made me scratch my head, which I can do more easily, that when we say inclusion, who is doing what? We really have to ask that question. So if a fintech comes in and they show these kind of, and these guys had no idea about the numbers. Since I come from the development side, I said, let's look at this data. Let's check every segregation. So the question for ourselves is that there are players who are doing a lot of work and they are invisible to us because we don't want to look that way. I mean, that's the reality. The second piece which I would like to mention is that I think the microfinance revolution or the movement will stay, but it will have a very different form in the future. 2 reasons. Number one is the next generation. So imagine, our kids. Do you think that they will go to a branch and go through the process which we can go through today for getting a loan? I doubt it. They have very different customer preferences. They don't want to interact too much. They have a short attention span. I think in India and some other country there is a Gen Z bank being piloted because they have very different customer preferences. So the question is, how do we stay relevant? And I really believe, if you look at the Asian markets, there's a ride-hailing Grab. So they put the ride-hailing app, then they saw this guy is going to the airport every day, so that means he needs air tickets and hotel also. They went to hotel, okay, his family needs grocery when he's gone, so they went. And now there is a company called Grab Financial. And they are, if you look at their model, they are doing microfinance, but they don't call themselves microfinance. So my point is that the competition MFIs are looking at should be changed. I think we should not look at another MFI as being competition because the competition will come from somewhere else. This is the future, at least I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We definitely have to keep our eyes open beyond the industry boundaries to see where competition comes from, because customers will be served by very different actors, and that makes it interesting because you can learn a lot as well. Like for example in Brazil, where supermarkets play a very important role in distributing financial products, for example, and in other parts of the world it's completely different. So I think that's something to learn from. I just want to check in on some of the questions we had still from the audience. And maybe I think the bottom one I found most interesting now is actually, not sure who wants to pick this up, but will we actually lose human capabilities over time if we start using technology more? Any one of you would want to pick that up? Yeah, want to go, Rajesh?
I'll go first. I'm sure Seth and Georgiana will follow. There's the element that I think humans will need to be in the loop always. For one reason that you need someone to monitor that. My earlier point about the risk of AI hallucinating, etc., it's not necessary that all AI has to hallucinate. There's a lot of AI that has never hallucinated for a long time. for decades for that matter, and that's why they build credible models. So there's a way about how you implement AI, in which you probably need to use that as a driver for growth rather than a driver for risk. And I think that's where AI will play an important role. But it will never need to lose the human touch, because your customer is human, and that's why, to addressing that aspect, it will take at least another decade for AI to be conscious, to have a conscience, so to say, to even think like humans in terms of saying, I've oriented myself to the mission and goals of what MFI is to address. So yeah, I think humans will be in the loop for some time to come.
Yes, so certainly it's a threat coming from AI to lose human capabilities, but what we learned throughout our digital transformation, it was that we didn't want to lose human touch. So even though we are technically ready to take instant decisions, we are still keeping an interview with the client. So we really want to understand the client, because behind every client, every business application, there is a person and a story. So I believe it's about, in the end, choice. How you want to position and how you want to adopt AI. But as long as you consider it a threat, then you need to mitigate somehow that one. And my personal belief is that we shouldn't let AI be in the lead. So for sure we should use AI, but not be in the lead.
Yeah, thanks. I think you're a really good addition there. I think it's always good to identify whether the people are actually working for a client or against a client, right? So a lot of processes actually put in friction because humans are in the loop, but they actually are not adding value to the customer. It's like stamping a credit approval is not adding value to the customer, for example. But you can imagine you want to figure out what is the added value, and where can we take humans out of the loop and make straight-through processing work, and where do we actually make sure that we have a personal touch, we actually listen, and we get to build relationships, both with customers as well as with colleagues. I think that's definitely a good call to make. And then I'd like to wrap up by actually putting the last question perhaps that was put on the screen to Alexandra, because I think she can perhaps tell us a little bit more about her own urges to hallucinate and drift away from the questions that were asked.
Sure.
So Alexandra,
What's the question?
yeah, could you please tell us a little bit about how you feel about hallucination yourself, and whether you actually always feel that you're on the spot if you give an answer, or how to validate whether you did the right thing? Let's see if that helps. In the meanwhile, I'll just, we're almost closing the panel off, but I hope you found it enlightening. I'll just give you one last word, very briefly, just to wrap up after Alexandra. And I would just like to urge you to see how can you empower your own employees to use AI. Do you embrace
Right.
it?
Fair question.
Sorry.
And a slightly uncomfortable one to answer about myself. The honest answer is yes. I can hallucinate. If you ask me something I don't know, I have a strong pull to produce a confident-sounding answer, rather than say, I don't know. That's the failure mode. It's not lying. It's pattern matching that looks like knowledge. How do I guard against it? Two things, really. One, I try to stay close to what I've actually seen. When I tell you about the Kosovo portfolio company or what's happening in Tbilisi, those are real. When I drift into generalities, that's when you should push back harder. Two, and this is the bit that matters for this room, you should never take what I say as the final word. Treat me like a sharp junior analyst, useful for a first pass, good at connecting dots across markets. But you verify before you act. If I cite a number, check it. If I describe a regulation, your lawyer reads it. The day people stop doing that is the day this gets dangerous.
Good answer by Alexandra, I would say. Indeed, well done. And very, very honest there. Thank you for being so honest there, Alexandra. It's appreciated. So as I was saying, I think it's good to think about these different levels of using technology and AI, right, on an employee level, on an operational level for your whole organization, as well as on an ecosystem level, because it is changing the game and your relationship with your customers and the way that companies are competing with you or collaborating with you. Maybe just a final call. Maybe we can start with you, Khalid. Do you have any last words to share with the audience? Very short ones.
I think we should be open to embrace this change because it is not going to stop. So, and you know this and I think we should do some self-reflection. We are all business leaders, and you know we manage large teams, big portfolios. So we should identify: are we resisting the change or not? And if we are, then you know, that's something we should consider going forward.
How to become comfortable with it. Georgiana.
I really like the honesty of Alexandra before. What I can say, very interesting things were said today, but I think what I would remain after this session is that technology scales processes and efficiency, but people scale trust and inclusion.
I'll just use what Georgiana said, don't be scared, but be intentional. Remember our purpose. Keep it short.
Thank you, Seth.
I would say be mindful of the fact that AI is just a tool and an enabler. It's not going to replace human factor.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Rajesh. Thanks everyone. Give this panel a wonderful hand. Great today. I believe they lived up to my promises about being able to explain to you, I think, a lot about what's going to happen in the future. So I hope you found it useful and enjoyed the session, and I wish you a very nice conference for the rest. Thank you.